All right, good afternoon. Thanks to those of you that are able to join us today for our Planning for Change Staff Forum and to discuss the school opening for 2021. An opening that is unlike any other that we've had in education in our lives, whether we were students or parents or staff members. Appreciate everyone being part of this today. Of course, we'd much rather be able to meet with people in person, but it's nice to be able to share some information with all of you. First, want to say how much we appreciate all that you're doing now to get ready for the new school year and the work that has been done throughout the summer as well. I'm here in my office. I'm Heidi Lawler, the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, and I have Ed Services team members here to help with technology and Q&A for us today, and that includes Shelly Santos, Marshall Beyer, Alice Solis, and Dr. Laura Fong. We've all been working, as you have been, to prepare for this new year. I just want to remind everyone a little bit about how we got here to opening with distance learning. I think all of us, it was our plan and our hope and our best intentions that we would open at the beginning of the school year with the traditional model and practicing social distancing. But as cases continue to increase and the county public health official gave guidance to school districts in Stanislaus County, we unfortunately are opening with distance learning. And I say unfortunately again, because we know that education, the best education happens in person, but we are learning a great deal and continue to learn every day and are completely confident that we are going to be able to provide for our students during this time and support teachers and our staff members as well as we move into the new year. This afternoon's forum is being recorded and it will be posted on the district's YouTube channel. And then also we have the PowerPoint that I'll be sharing with you will be posted on the website as well. We're going to wrap up right at 2 o'clock so that we are honoring your time, and we hope to get to as many of your questions as possible. All right, so start with the slides then, Marshall. All right, we can go to the next one. Okay, so our purpose today is to review our learning models and instructional expectations, hoping to provide some clarity, discuss supports for students and staff, share health and safety protocols, and provide time for Q&A. We worked throughout the late spring and early summer and into the middle of the summer now with a large number of individuals as members of teams who helped us out. I want to share some of the recommendations that came across as being overarching recommendations that all of those individuals, whether they were parents through surveys, staff from surveys, or teachers and staff members involved in the planning work through the large expanded planning team and or the subcommittees, these were areas of interest for everyone. And so, number one, support internet access. Focus on building positive and meaningful relationships with students and families, increase communication with families, prioritize social emotional well-being, and provide technology support to students, staff, and parents. These were high priority items for everybody who is involved in planning for the new school year. Just quickly, I was going to go over our learning models and just to emphasize that we are, of course, as a district going into the distance learning model with a number of our students and teachers participating in hybrid learning, which is our TUSD independent learning model. Next, I'd like to share with you our schedules. I'm going to quickly just show each of the different grade span schedules that we have across the district, and then we'll go back and talk about an elementary and a secondary schedule after we've looked at all of them. Again, this will be posted on the website. Most of you have seen these, however, it will be available to you as a resource. So our first schedule is our kindergarten AM and PM schedule, our kindergarten extended day, our elementary grades 1 through 6, our grades 7 and 8 at Dutcher Middle School, and grades 7 and 8 at Turlock Junior High School, grades 9 through 12 at Pittman High School, and Turlock High School. Also, we do have schedules for Academy and for Roselawn. Those, based on the uniqueness of those programs, are unique schedules as well. So, and they'll meet the needs of their students and their staff. So going back to our elementary schedule, in planning for the new year with distance learning, and for those of you, if you may be aware of this or may not, our initial planning when we first started working on this was really to develop a blended learning model. We were expecting that we would perhaps be able to come back to school, or we'd come back to school traditionally and then may need to later in the year move to either the blended or distance learning model, because what we were hearing early on in the spring was that the expectation was that the COVID-19 during the warm summer months, the infection rate would decrease or would cease, and then during the cold and flu season we might see an upsurge again. And so we were planning for that future, and then of course we know that things played out very differently. So these schedules initially were to provide an option for looking at that blended learning, and then now we have worked and transitioned them to the distance learning model. A large number of people have had taken part in this effort, and that includes teachers and administrators. TTA was involved very much as well, so that we have a schedule that supports student learning and also is something that is doable for our teachers. And most importantly, that these schedules, they mirror the traditional school day. One of the things that we really recognize is that, and we know this about almost all human beings, that structure is an important part of our lives, and it helps us to get things done well, effectively and efficiently. And that's true for children more than anyone. And we've heard from parents that one of the challenges that they face is having that structure. And so we do know that when students are coming back to school, that's going to be a change for them to come back to distance learning, and that they now will have more of a scheduled day. It will be a change for the students and for their parents, and we're going to want to support them in that. But if you look at the schedule, you can see the area that is the orange type shade, and that's the time of day when teachers are providing that direct instruction. Looking at starting the day out at the elementary with social emotional learning from 8:30 to 8:45, and then going into language arts from 8:45 to 9:30. We know for our elementary students that time for English language arts or Spanish language arts is crucial for them to develop the reading and writing skills that are necessary for them to be successful in secondary school. The next block of time is the blue block of time. And in that period, and on the grades 1 through 6 schedule, that's from 9:30 until 10:10. During that time, students would be doing independent work in some cases. There may be some small group work where a teacher would meet with a smaller group of students or one-on-one. There may be also paraprofessional or literacy coach support during that time for students. Then students have a break from 10:10 to 10:30. And again, the rest of the day repeats in a similar manner with math and social science. There's an MTSS time built in as well to provide support for students who would need intervention or enrichment. And then also built into the day is designated English language development. We know for our English learners that it's going to be more important than ever for them to have specific time in their day to work on developing their English language proficiency. And then we have a time for music, art, PE, and enrichment. And I'm working with the music teachers on what the music schedule will look like. And so we don't anticipate it would solely be in this time. We anticipate it would be more like the schedule that we normally have at the elementaries, with the exception that as we're moving forward during this year, and this would have happened with the traditional model or with the blended learning model, we are going to be making some adjustments to our music schedule. All right, next to look at a secondary schedule. And again, we had a number of those that you saw. I'm going to speak to the Turlock Junior High schedule. And at the secondary level, for each period of the day, the teacher is providing that direct instruction for approximately half of the period. And then the remaining part of the period is there for the teacher to provide those similar supports as what we talked about in the elementary model, and time for the students to do independent practice for that specific course. As we were developing these schedules, one of the one of the conversations that we had and that we discussed was, potentially doing a block schedule for our secondary in particular. You can see the elementary schedule is already somewhat blocked, and there's a concern about, in a block model that would students have access to all of their courses as fully as if we scheduled out a regular day. And so we ended up with this full day model. As a reminder, not all students have 0 period, and those are limited number of courses for some of our students. I also want to share with Wednesday, like our current Wednesday, it remains a minimum day, and that was based on input from our planning teams. And during that time, after students have finished working with the teacher, then they will go, the teachers then will have time for prep, time for PLC collaboration, their lunchtime, of course, and then any additional parent and student communication. So we know like everything that we are working through at this time, that these schedules, they had our best thoughts and taking input from stakeholders, and we know that there are some things that may flex as we go forward, but really the most important piece of the scheduling is that teachers take time to establish connections and build positive relationships with students and parents. So in moving into the next section on meeting instructional needs, the #1 priority for our teachers is going to be connecting with students. We know that there were issues with that. It didn't always happen in the spring, and not to go back to discussing that, or that's not our focus today. But we know now going forward that we're starting the new school year, and starting the new school year is always an exciting time of the year, and we want it to have that same feel. But what's going to be essential is that you have a connection, our teachers have a connection with every single one of their students and also with their parents. And if there are issues with that and you're having difficulty making those connections, please do work with your site administrator as soon as you realize there's a problem. We want to address that quickly and find a way to reconnect those students. We'll talk a little bit more later about the work we've done in the area of technology. We've done a great deal to connect as many of our students as possible, but we know that there are going to be some who might have some challenges. We still find in our county and in our school district attendance area that there are some families who live in geographical locations where it's not easy to get them internet service. It's not easy for them to have access to that. So we need to find a way to connect with those students as well. We need everyone all of our 14,000 to start the school year on August 12th and be ready to move through the school year until we're able to return to instruction in person. Next, on meeting instructional needs, focusing on refined priority standards. And so with that, we are looking at those standards that are most essential. We know you're not going to be able to cover the same amount of material during this distance learning as you would if students were in person, especially because you are going to be spending more time on that connection with students. That's going to be the top priority. We know that we heard from students that the most important thing to them was having that opportunity to see and talk with their teacher and the students in their class. And we heard lots of stories about really great things that happened where it made a huge difference to children in getting through a difficult time because of their teachers. Next, implement a strategic assessment plan to identify loss of learning. There have been studies done on what that looks like as far as the learning that was lost because students were not present. And so we want to assess in an appropriately timely manner, being sure that the relationship piece is established first, but then finding out where students are. And, as I'm thinking through our students across the district, I and many others have some real specific concerns regarding English learners, our students on IEPs, also our elementary students who are in the process of learning to read. It's very, very important that we know where they are and that we work to move them through the standards and get their reading development on track. Also, mathematics is an area of concern as well. And so we'll be doing that assessment there too. And, when we think about our students who are in secondary school, if they're taking their math sequence, and we know that some students struggle with math. So if we had a student, for example, who was in the Integrated Math 1 and they didn't receive that full course, for those students to move into Integrated Math 2 now is going to be a challenge, and there will be a need to go back and provide instruction on some of those previous standards so that they're prepared for the Integrated Math 2 course. As I mentioned, English learners and students with disabilities are a concern, so we want to ensure that we've got supports in place there. And then we also want to connect kids to school. We want to make school so that it's fun for them. We did many things during the spring, and not only the district, but the community, to help students, particularly our seniors. And we want to make the school year feel like school is the place where students enjoy those connections with their friends and family and their teachers. And so, it is a community and a culture that is developed at every single school site, and we want that feeling to be part of the year this year as well. Some of the groups of students that we think about, I think most, that we also have in our thoughts are our seniors. Last year's seniors had a really unique experience, and it was difficult for them to end the school year as they did. We were fortunate that we were able to put together the virtual ceremonies that turned out very well, as well as award ceremonies. But these students now, they're excited about starting their senior year, and it's not the beginning of the senior year that they expected. But we want to do everything we can for them and for all of our students as they're making important transitions through the school year. Next, regarding meeting instructional needs, as I hope that you've heard and that I've emphasized, and we've talked about this a great deal in educational services and with principals, that connection and that face-to-face is the most important part of the day for students. That's the place where our students are having that connection with the teacher, and that is where we see the use of technology being most important. We've had concerns that have come up when people have seen our schedule regarding, how much screen time students are going to be having. And so with that schedule and with our Chromebooks, we also have made sure that all of our students have their hard copy textbooks and any consumable books and materials as well, because we don't want students to be on a device all day long. That's not going to be healthy for them. So they intentionally, that's very, very purposeful, to send home those books so that they are ready to use those and that they don't have to be looking at a screen all day. We know that we've got materials available online and that we've got the digital resources, but it needs to be a balance. And I think that's very important for teachers to hear. So in thinking about what teaching looks like, we'll follow that model of providing instruction, guided practice with you helping the students along, checking for understanding to ensure that students do understand the concept, and then providing them that time for independent practice. I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to focus on the instruction that you as teachers are giving rather than assigning. We don't need to see the same number of assignments that you might in a typical year. And that's for the students' benefit, and it's for your benefit as well. We know that this is going to be a challenging approach to providing instruction, so it's important that you as teachers are focusing on what you are able to do and to do well. And so I did receive a few calls from parents who talked about during other times, and not even just during distance learning, but that sometimes assignments are coming through to students throughout the day, particularly I think in secondary courses. And so what we're asking is be mindful about that. Don't think that you have to provide as many assignments. Do what seems reasonable and manageable, and focus, if you're a secondary teacher, that those assignments should be coming through while you have that class, while you're working with that particular class. And so you are going to modify expectations from a typical year. We are not expecting that at the end of the trimester or the quarter, if we are in distance learning for that period of time, that you would be in the same place with students as you were last year or the year before. We don't expect that. We want you to provide them rich instruction. We want them to move forward and make progress, but we all need to understand that there are limitations to this model. We will do our best if you are focused on providing that strong instruction every day with your students. We want to create a positive experience for the students and for our teachers. All of our teachers who work in TUSD, you do this work because you love it. You are called to do this. You know the art and you know the science of teaching. We've done so much work as a district to continue to build our teaching practices and working through our PLCs. You are instructional experts, and you want to flourish with your students. So, that's the way we'd like to have this model set up so that you're able to be successful in that way. And then finally, please consider the emotional well-being of all of your students. We do know that students have had some difficulties during this time and that they will continue to have more isolation than they would if school were open. So we do need to be attending to that, listening carefully, and if there are any concerns that come up, please share those with an administrator. Next, we, as I mentioned, with our students with disabilities, that is a population of students who we're very concerned about. I'm going to have Dr. Fong come on to the forum now and share some information regarding changes for the new school year with regard to special education.
Thank you, Heidi. Hello, everyone. This is a copy of what our special education distance learning plan looks like. This is a new requirement of us this year from some new legislation that came across. And so what it's designed to do is, since we're unable to implement the full IEP because we're on a modified schedule, this gives the parent information on how the student services will be given to them and implemented during this time of distance learning, and for students that are maybe on the hybrid learning model. So teachers will fill this out in collaboration with other service providers at the beginning of the year in the first 3 weeks of school, and these will be mailed home from the special education office.
Thank you, Laura. And my apologies for the echo that came through. We're not quite sure why that happened, but I appreciate her sharing that with us. And it is going to be essential that we are supporting our students who have disabilities, and working together. We have outstanding teams who do that effort and meeting all the different needs of those students. Next, talking about supporting emotional health. Please do plan the beginning of your activities as you would as in a normal year. That you are working to build that classroom community, that you are developing trust with your students and helping them in that manner. It's going to be very, very unique because rather than being present with them and being able to, have those chances for those beginning of the year activities, those, just getting to know one another and helping to build that classroom culture, the students, of course, are going to be in their own homes. So be thinking about how, you might be able to engage those students, help them to build connections with you and with their classmates as well. We also know that it's important for us to be, as I shared, that to be mindful of any concerns with students. We do know, and we sent out an email during the when we were going through distance learning about any sort of abuse or risk that we become aware of. We are mandated reporters, and it's essential that everyone is paying attention to students in that regard. We've heard from different agencies that the number of reports of child abuse decreased a great deal during this time, and the professionals in those agencies believe that's because students have been out of school, because as mandated reporters, we often are the ones who observe any sort of abuse, and then we are able to report that to the appropriate authorities. So we still have that responsibility. Please do pay attention to those any concerns that you might have. Sometimes we have that gut feeling about something, and that gut feeling often is accurate. So we're relying on teachers to help us if there are any problems with students that we become aware of, including abuse. We will be providing tier 1, 2, and 3 social emotional supports. Yesterday we had a meeting with the staff from Jessica's house. We're not going to be using volunteers during this time in general. However, we'll continue with Jessica's house. They've done some work with the students in the community throughout the summer months, and they're such a great partner with us and provide a huge resource. But in addition to that, we have our care program team, and our clinicians and our team of interns will be available at every site to provide support, and we'll go through that process of referrals as well as we would do if we were in person. We're also going to be working to integrate daily social emotional learning. Our early childhood program uses conscious discipline with our elementaries. We have Toolbox, and we'll continue with PBIS and No Bully as well. All right, next up, health and safety. All of us are living in a different world now with regard to health and safety. And so when you're at work, you're going to use the necessary personal protective equipment. All of us that have been working throughout this time, I think we've developed some great routines for that, and we are accustomed to it now in the workplace. And it becomes easier as you are, as you implement those different types of habits and move into ensuring that you have the appropriate health and safety protocols that you're using every day. We know that some of those may change over time. We'll continue to look to our local and state officials for guidance, and we'll make any changes necessary. Everybody will be increasing their own personal hygiene standards for hand washing and sanitizing. We'll do that as adults. Getting everything set up now while we do not have students present will help us for when students are present. We want to get all of those routines and procedures in place. We want to find out if there are any concerns that come up as far as specific to a site, as you're working at your site, and become aware of that. Additionally, I will say that, we know, those of us that are at work, we've gotten very good at social distancing. Our Ed Services team, who used to meet in this office of mine, we meet down in the large conference room and spread out around that. We sanitize the place before, all the touch surfaces before we start our meetings. And we, again, make sure that we're implementing social distancing. And that's just become part of our process, part of our daily routine. I also want to touch base on the idea of practicing empathy with students, parents, and colleagues. There have been some real challenges as a part of the COVID-19 pandemic. And, we know that people have different feelings. We heard very loudly on Tuesday night that there are parents who absolutely believe we should be opening schools. And I believe that we have staff members who have that same belief. We are not currently able to do so, but we need to recognize that we all do have those differences of opinion, and to respect one another and think about one another with kindness. We don't know what's going on in another person's life. We can never know that exactly. And we have colleagues and students and parents who are caring for relatives who are ill, who may have been ill themselves. We have pregnant employees who may have additional concerns. We have employees who have recently gone through chemotherapy. It's just really hard to know exactly what's going on with a person. And so just as our go-to response in working with one another is with kindness and empathy, and that will help us get through this. If we do get into a situation where we find that there are cases of COVID in any of our schools or offices, again, that empathy is crucial there too. We don't want to have a culture of COVID shaming, and that is a real it's a real occurrence. And I'm hoping that we'll work toward having greater empathy for one another. I wanted to share with you also another quick share is the personal protective equipment, and so there's the list there. Again, this will be posted. There are a number of things also that Maintenance and Operations has done. And then we also have signage around the school district, and you're probably starting to see some of that out and about as well. I also wanted to share regarding technology services. There have been some questions about how we're making that connectivity for students. And so we have a number of hotspots that have been purchased and have been distributed to families. We need teachers to help us with that. we do not have firsthand knowledge of who has internet connection and who doesn't. And so your feedback to us on this is essential. If you become aware of a student who is not connecting with you and you're not certain why, please do let your administrator know. And if it's related to technology, we are going to do everything we can to get those students connected. We also are working on some shared spaces. The intent of this is not to have students go and sit in a parking lot for 6 hours a day, or to go to the university or so, for that, but just to have more connectivity in our community and to provide some opportunities for that, just broadening our connectivity, not just for distance learning, but for any time. And then we're partnering with Charter Spectrum and AT&T for reduced cost home internet, and that's going really well also. So we are finding that we're able to connect more and more students. I believe there are hundreds of students now who are connected that were not at the end of last year. So that will make a big positive difference for us. As far as next steps, we'll be providing support to parents and to staff based on survey results and requests. Some of the things that we've heard from teachers is that they're concerned about attendance. We know that that is going to be important, and as soon as teachers know that they have a concern about a student or we see that there are absences, we have staff to provide help with that. We know that some of our teachers are concerned and some of our other professionals about technology and using technology. We are all learning every single day. And there are many of us that had perhaps participated in a limited number of Zoom meetings prior to all of this, and now we're becoming more and more proficient. We are also working to provide our teachers and staff with the technology applications or programs that are needed to be successful. And so we are listening to feedback and getting those things in place. There are some apps that have been recommended that we have reviewed, gone through a review process, and I want to make you aware that those must go to the Board of Trustees for approval, and the next meeting is August 18th. So a number of those will go onto the board agenda for the 18th, and then we'll be able to process the purchase orders after that time. So on some of the items that we're purchasing, there will be a little bit of a delay after the first day of school, but we will get those out to everybody. We are getting our books and learning materials and Chromebooks distributed, and that's happening this week and a little bit last week. And so we want our students to be ready to have everything that they need at the beginning of the school year. And thanks to our sites for all the work that they've done with that. We'll be conducting virtual beginning of the year events, including back to school nights. The scheduling was pretty easy with that because we didn't have to worry about about going from site to site or overlapping events. So that's been a positive. And as we're looking through the calendar for the remainder of the year, we're looking at each one of our events on a case-by-case basis. And I think, again, that's probably been one of the biggest challenges for us, really emotionally as we move through all this, it's difficult to have our students who normally participate in a variety of different activities not be able to do so. I think that we need to work on finding creative ways to make some of those things happen. I met with the music teachers recently, and we talked about what concerts might look like in the late fall, because typically there are concerts in the fall. And if we're back in school but we have distance learning, what might those look like? And so rethinking some of the things that we had done before and doing them in a new way as we're moving forward with distance learning. And then another next step is to develop a detailed phase-in return plan for safe return to in-person instruction. As you may know, there was a waiver that was distributed on Monday, and that gives us steps as far as what we would need to do in order to return to in-person learning for our elementaries. That's the only level that's been addressed at this time. So while we do not expect that we would have approval on that based on what we've heard from the public health officer and also from the county superintendent last night, that would not be an option at this time. we want to be poised and ready to move back as soon as we can. Again, we know that's the best model, and we know that that's the way we provide instruction most effectively, and that we would like to have students back on school as quickly as it's safe to do so. All right, and so with that, I think that that's just about all of our presentations. So Shelley is here to, she's been jotting down questions, and so she's going to give us questions, and we'll work together and answer those for you.
Okay. The first is the first are a few questions related to just be working from the classroom, desktop computer, or Chromebook.
So for our paraprofessionals, a number of them will be working from classrooms. We are looking at that on a case-by-case basis, class-by-class basis. We know that some of our paraprofessionals are in a classroom with one teacher, and so there's plenty of space to socially distance and to be able to do their jobs effectively in that space and in a safe manner. We know that we have some other programs that have perhaps 6 paraprofessionals in a classroom, and so we're going to need to make some adjustments there to ensure that we have social distancing in place, and we will have the appropriate equipment. We're working toward that for all of our staff to be able to do the necessary work. The support that they are providing may look different in different classrooms. Again, special education is always unique because you've got the individual education plan, and that will impact us. And I'm going to look to Laura Fong and see, is there anything else that I can add to that? Okay, all right, so we're good to go.
Okay, we have 2 questions related to safety. The first is, will bathrooms and common areas be cleaned multiple times daily? And then the second is it possible to have signs posted on doors to remind all that enter a room to mask up before entering?
And we do have signs that are the signs indicating that masks are to be worn, and I will do some follow-up as far as, you know, where those will be posted. As far as I know at this point, that they would be posted across the site in different places. I'm not certain if they're on every door, but I can look into that further. And then as far as cleaning restrooms and other areas of campus, that is the plan, yes, to have that happen on a regular basis throughout the day. And I will also share with you that, again, part of it, I think each one of us has our own part to do in that as well. When we finish in this room and my colleagues go back to their offices, I will wipe this office down entirely. Before they arrived, Connie and I did the same thing. So it really is part of our regular operating procedures at this point. And so we will have staff who will help with in those areas where it's appropriate, but there is some work that each of us will need to do as well.
Okay. A few questions related to instruction. We'll do them one at a time. During MTSS and during designated ELD, are teachers expected to provide independent work for the remainder of the class?
So as we're working through that, the expectation would be that the students who are not working with a teacher on that at that time, that they would be able to do some of the other independent work from another time during the day, perhaps. Another thing I would also say is that we are working on library services, so students will have access to library books, and we are putting in place, and this is where much of the work that we're doing as we move through the process of taking care of large-scale parts of education, for example, what our scheduling, what our instruction, what our materials distribution, taking care of all of those. Then some of the additional services that are part of the regular school day, as I mentioned, those activities with students. Library is an important service at our schools, and we do have our library techs. So we're working through a process that would provide students an opportunity to have independent reading materials at home. And the idea is that on your school websites, there are lists of books that you can access, what is actually in the library collection at your school, and we'll be working with library techs and administration to put together a process for parents to be able to pick up those library books after they have checked them out electronically. So that would be another, something that a student could be working on their own, doing some independent reading while the teacher is engaged with others, either whether that's during ELD or MTSS time, or if that would be during that other time of the day where teachers may be working with small groups.
Teachers have utilized the free Zoom version. Will we have the upgraded Zoom accounts for teachers?
Yes, we have. We're in the process of purchasing the upgraded version, a professional version of Zoom, and that will be available, we believe, by the end of the week.
Can we require students' video cameras on during direct instruction, or is that a violation of privacy?
So I will say that question I have not received previously, and I would need to do some looking into EdCode a little bit further on that. I don't believe that that was our intention at all during the planning of distance learning, that we would have students to require that they record. So I would need to seek some additional clarification on that.
What will attendance look like? Do we take attendance at the elementary level during each whole group session?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as we are, our requirements for distance learning from the state of California include that we need to take and monitor attendance, we need to monitor engagement, and we need to monitor completion of work. All of those things are required for us to follow up on for our distance learning. We are looking to continue to use Aries for attendance, and our students would, for elementary, we would take attendance at the beginning of the day for their overall attendance. However, for the remainder of the day, that would be where we would look at engagement to ensure that students were engaged. With our secondary students, they would be taking attendance period by period.
What will the role of substitute teachers be during distance learning?
So for substitutes, that's an area that we're continuing to work on. And so I don't have Dave Laddick here from Human Resources, but I can share that question with him.
And our last question is related to special ed. What will be the procedure for a parent of a special education student that would like to reduce the number of direct instructional minutes or face-to-face instructional time?
Okay. If there is a situation in which a parent would like to reduce the number of minutes that they're receiving during distance learning, they would contact that case manager, and that case manager would contact that program specialist, and they would work together to revise the distance learning plan.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the things that we definitely know is that questions will continue to come up as we move forward with our distance learning implementation. You all are continuing to learn as we are going. We've talked for years about learning by doing, and we absolutely are learning by doing at this time. I just spoke to one of our adult school teachers earlier today, and she was watching webinars. She was working to develop her skill set so that she would be ready to work with her adult school students. And this is all new for all of us, but it's really, really important that we take the time to be patient with ourselves, with our colleagues, with our students and parents, and that we have some grace as far as what our expectations are. And I say that to you also for yourselves, because many of our teachers hold themselves to a very high standard. Our teachers in TUSD care a great deal about students. They care a great deal about their progress that they make every single year. And so we've heard from teachers, and one of the things that's been a big challenge for teachers and for our staff members is the idea that they are unable to make really set plans as they normally would. Educators are planners. That's a big part of us as educators. And so uncertainty is very, very difficult. So I encourage you to, Marshall said it a little while ago, take a breath, be mindful that for yourself, things won't be perfect. But the reality is, if we were opening in person as we did last year, that probably everything wasn't perfect then either. We deal with human beings, and human beings, especially small ones or young ones, they definitely, they're all different, and they cause us to go in directions that maybe we hadn't intended. So there isn't a perfect in education. We're always striving to be better and to do our best. And so we absolutely encourage you to do that as well. Okay. All right. So another question came through regarding childcare. And so I can absolutely speak to that. That's another one of the areas. One of the challenges that we've found with all of this is the way that guidance has continued to change over time. We heard within the course of last week on one day that districts would be able to apply for a waiver for childcare, and we would be able to provide that childcare. By Friday of that same week, things had completely changed, and that was no longer an option for us. And I understand how these things happen. And the way decisions, I believe, are being made in Sacramento is that there are teams of people who are discussing things, and sometimes they make decisions with the best intentions, like thinking that school districts could provide them childcare and that they could waive the licenses. However, I believe that those individuals who work in early childhood and in licensing for childcare in the state determined that that wasn't going to be the best approach, and that there was concerns regarding school districts and liability with childcare. And so some districts have been fortunate that they run their ACEs programs, and there's some flexibility with ACEs that allows those districts to then move that ACEs to being more of a childcare program during the day. And so we do have neighboring districts that are doing that. Turlock Unified partners with the city of Turlock, and that's been a great partnership. They provide our ACEs and our play programs, and we know that many of our teachers and staff members do participate in those that their children participate. And so we don't have that particular component of our school district to now have that flexibility within TUSD to offer that. So that's put us in a situation where at this time, until things change, that we're not able to, on our campuses, provide childcare. And we do know that the city of Turlock has opened a distance learning day camp, and that there are some of our employees were able to register for that. And Turlock Unified has learned just yesterday that we are able to support that program for our employees, those who are registered in it. And so there is an email that will come out shortly regarding that, or has come out already, to give you some information on that. And it was our sincere hope that that waiver process would actually be, would move forward, and we'd be permitted to provide that childcare. However, unfortunately, at this time, the Sacramento State of California is saying no. And we'll continue to look into that as an option if that would become available again. So we do recognize that childcare is an issue for our families. And again, we feel fortunate that we have that option for our teachers to work from home if they have that childcare issue. And we'll continue to support them as best we can as we're moving to distance learning. Again, knowing that this is a temporary situation, and that is our greatest hope that we will return to in-person learning at our school sites, that would reduce some of those daycare needs that are currently there. And so if we're able to, as a county, get our numbers down, then we'll move in that direction and be able to get kids back on campuses. Are there any other questions? I also want to speak to, I know much of this information pertains to teachers, and that was really, a great part of the focus is to help teachers understand what's going to be happening in the classrooms, provide some additional clarification and expectations, and really that expectation that we want you as teachers, number one, to connect to students and families, and that is the greatest priority, and that number two, that we focus on trying to mitigate that learning loss, but in a reasonable way that's reasonable for students, for families, and for our teachers. And then for our other support staff, we have appreciated throughout the spring and throughout this summer all of the efforts from those who work in a variety of different sectors across the district, including our office clerical, our tech staff has been amazing. Child nutrition did a wonderful job for us, and they will be up and running with grab-and-go meals again shortly, starting next week, of course. We've had our other departments, including maintenance and operations, all of those who've been working during the summer at the school sites to provide support. Our custodial staff has done an exceptional job as well. We just can't say enough of all the different individuals in our district who make up TUSD. We know that some of our employees, as we're moving through the school year, that they may serve in somewhat different role. For example, we will not have children to cross at the crosswalks, and we will not have students to supervise on campus, but our campus supervisors will be able to provide support when there are attendance and or behavioral issues as well. So we're all working together, and that again is going to be essential for us, is that we are working as a team. We can do this. I believe that if the work that we completed at the end of the year with regard to graded distance learning, our teachers provided that instruction in order to help students to be successful and be prepared for the next grade level or course. And so we know and expect that teachers and staff members are going to start off the 2021 school year with distance learning, but with all the excitement that we have at the beginning of every school year. So at this point, we don't have any further questions, and so we're going to go ahead and log off. But I want to thank you for all that you've done and all that you'll continue to do. Please reach out if you have questions. The Educational Services team is here to help, as are our other departments. Your site administrators are there for you as well. And thank you for all of that, and have a great afternoon. Bye now.